Have you ever caught yourself staring at a mannequin? Just a little longer than you meant to. Not because it moved, not because it blinked, but because for a single unsettling moment, your brain couldn't decide whether you were looking at an object or another human being. It is a strange feeling, one that almost everyone experiences at some point. We know mannequins aren't alive. We know wax figures can't breathe. And yet, some of them make us deeply uncomfortable. Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon, the Uncanny Valley. The closer something comes to looking perfectly human, the more disturbing even the smallest imperfection becomes. Eyes that seem just a little too focused, skin that appears almost warm, hands detailed enough to reveal tiny wrinkles, subtle veins, even fingerprints. Our brains are experts at recognizing other human beings. In fact, we're so good at it that when something imitates us almost perfectly, our instincts begin searching for the smallest sign that something is wrong. And sometimes they fail, because every so often a face appears that seems far too real to belong to a mannequin. For nearly a century, people have traveled to a single bridal shop in northern Mexico, not to buy a wedding dress, but to stand silently in front of a display window and look into the eyes of a bride. Some visitors laugh, some leave feeling strangely unsettled. Others refuse to go near the glass at all, because according to one of Mexico's oldest urban legends, the woman standing in that window is made of fiberglass, or wax, or plastic. She was once alive. Her name is La Pascualita. The story takes us to the city of Chihuahua, in northern Mexico, a place where deserts stretch for miles. Colonial buildings still line the streets, and local legends are passed from one generation to the next. Among those streets stands a bridal boutique that has become almost as famous as the city itself. Its official name has changed over the decades. Its dresses have changed, its owners have changed, but one thing has remained exactly where it has always been: the bride. She has stood in the same display window watching thousands of people pass by for nearly 100 years. Unlike ordinary store mannequins, she doesn't appear artificial. Visitors immediately notice the details: the delicate wrinkles around her knuckles, the subtle discoloration beneath her fingernails, the veins visible beneath the skin of her hands, the tiny folds around her wrists. Even from several feet away, many people assume they are looking at a real woman standing perfectly still. And perhaps the most unsettling part is her face. Large glass eyes that seem to reflect the light differently every time you move. Long eyelashes. Soft facial features. An expression that's almost impossible to describe. Not smiling, not sad, not anything, something that you can put a name to it. Simply watching. For decades, customers have walked into the shop asking exactly the same question: who made her? But according to local legend, that was never the right question. The real question was, who was she? No one knows exactly when the rumor started. Like most urban legends, it didn't begin with a newspaper, or a police report, or an official investigation. It began with whispers. According to the story, the bridal shop was owned by a woman named Pascuala Esparza. On March 25, 1930, she unveiled a breathtaking new mannequin in the shop's front window. Customers immediately gathered outside. At first, they admired the craftsmanship. The bride looked astonishingly lifelike, far more realistic than anything most people had ever seen. But admiration quickly turned into curiosity. Then curiosity became suspicion. People began pointing to the mannequin's hands, the delicate wrinkles around the knuckles, the tiny veins beneath the skin, the fingernails which appeared almost impossibly real. Some claimed they could even see fingerprints. Others insisted her glass eyes reflected the light the way human eyes do. It didn't take long before someone asked the question that would define the next 100 years. Where did she come from? And almost immediately, someone else claimed to know the answer. According to local legend, Pascuala Esparza had once had a beautiful young daughter. She was engaged to be married. Her wedding dress had already been chosen. The ceremony had been planned. Everything was ready. But only days before the wedding, tragedy struck. Depending on who tells the story, the young woman was bitten by a venomous spider. Others insist it was a scorpion. Either way, the result was the same. She died before ever walking down the aisle. The grief was unbearable. Unable to let go of her only daughter, Pascuala supposedly made an unimaginable decision. She had her daughter's body embalmed, dressed her in the very wedding gown she was meant to wear, and placed her forever inside the shop window, watching the life she would never get to live. It is a heartbreaking story, one that has survived for nearly a century. But there is one problem. There has never been any evidence that it actually happened. No death certificate connecting the legend to the mannequin. No historical record confirming the existence of a daughter who died on the eve of her wedding. No document proving that the figure in the window is anything more than an exceptionally realistic display mannequin. And yet, the legend refused to disappear, because once people believed they were looking at a dead bride, every tiny detail seemed to confirm it. The longer people stare at La Pascualita, the stranger she seemed. Visitors became obsessed with her hands. Photographs spread across newspapers, magazines, and eventually the internet. People zoomed in, searching for proof. Some claimed the skin had pores. Others pointed to faint blue veins running beneath the surface. The fingernails appeared uneven, natural, not molded, not painted, natural. Her wrists seemed too delicate. The texture of her skin looked almost translucent beneath the display lights. Even today, thousands of photographs of La Pascualita continue to circulate online, and beneath almost every one of them, the same debate begins again. That's obviously a mannequin. No, look at the hands. Look at the eyes. Look at the veins. It has become one of those mysteries where people don't simply observe the evidence. They interpret it. And once you believe she's human, every photograph begins to support that belief. As the years passed, the legend grew far beyond the streets of Chihuahua. Visitors no longer came to buy wedding dresses. They came to see La Pascualita, to stand in front of the display window and decide for themselves. Was she simply an extraordinary mannequin or something much stranger? Naturally, the people everyone wanted to question were the employees. After all, they spent every day with her. They dressed her, cleaned her, moved her. If anyone knew the truth, surely it would be them. But the answers they gave only deepened the mystery. Over the decades, former employees described an unusual routine when La Pascualita's dress needed to be changed. Instead of changing her in front of customers, they would first pull curtains across the display window. Some visitors found that perfectly reasonable. Others didn't. The curtains only fueled the rumors. People began asking why so much privacy was necessary for a mannequin. According to local stories, some employees refused to look directly into her eyes while changing her clothes. Others claimed her hands felt disturbingly lifelike. These stories have never been verified. Many exist only through local retellings, passed from one generation to the next. But that didn't stop them from spreading. If anything, the uncertainty made them even more powerful. Soon, new stories began to appear. Some visitors claimed La Pascualita's eyes followed them as they walked past the shop. Others insisted her expression looked different every time they returned. A few even believed she had changed positions overnight. There are no photographs proving any of this, no surveillance footage, no credible witness accounts capable of confirming the stories, and yet the rumors refuse to disappear because that's how legends survive. Not through evidence, but through repetition. The more people whispered, the more believable the whispers became. Eventually, La Pascualita became something far larger than a mannequin. She became part of Chihuahua itself. Taxi drivers told her story to tourists. Travel guides mentioned her alongside the city's historic landmarks. Visitors lined up outside the bridal shop not because they expected answers, but because they wanted to experience the feeling for themselves. That strange moment when your eyes meet hers, and logic begins arguing with instinct. Eventually, the legend became so famous that people began searching for evidence. Not folklore, not rumors, evidence. Could the woman behind the glass really be human? Or had nearly a century of storytelling convinced people to see something that was never there? Art historians, collectors, and mannequin experts have pointed toward a far simpler explanation. By the early 20th century, European manufacturers had begun producing incredibly realistic display mannequins. Many were sculpted from wax, wood, and papier-mâché. Some were fitted with real human hair. Others were painted by hand, layer after layer, to imitate natural skin. Glass eyes were individually crafted. Hands were carefully sculpted to show veins, knuckles, and fingernails. These mannequins weren't designed merely to display clothing. They were designed to imitate life itself, to stop people in the street, to make them look, to make them remember. If La Pascualita was created by one of these workshops, her realism would have been remarkable, but not impossible. There is another important detail. No forensic examination has ever confirmed that La Pascualita contains human remains. No publicly available scientific study has concluded that she is a preserved body. And despite decades of rumors, the bridal shop has never presented her as anything other than its famous mannequin. In other words, the central claim behind the legend has never been proven. But perhaps that isn't why people continue visiting. Because for many, La Pascualita isn't interesting because she might be a mummy. She's interesting because just for a few seconds, she makes people question what they're saying. And sometimes, that's all a legend needs. Nearly a century has passed since La Pascualita first appeared in the shop window. The bridal boutique is still there. The bride is still standing exactly where generations before us first saw her. Every year, thousands of visitors continue traveling to Chihuahua to see her for themselves. Some arrive convinced she is nothing more than an extraordinary mannequin. Others leave believing they have just looked into the face of a preserved human body. Neither side has ever managed to prove the other wrong. There is no verified evidence that La Pascualita is the embalmed body of Pascuala Esparza's daughter. No forensic examination has confirmed the legend. No historical records have verified the story. At the same time, the rumors have never disappeared. They've simply been passed from one generation to the next, growing larger with every retelling. Today, La Pascualita has become far more than a store display. She has become one of Mexico's most famous urban legends, a tourist attraction, a local mystery, and one of the most convincing mannequins ever created. Whether she's simply an incredible work of craftsmanship or something far stranger depends entirely on who you ask. But if you ever find yourself standing outside that bridal shop, looking through the glass, don't be surprised if you stay a little longer than you expected. Because almost everyone who visits La Pascualita walks away asking exactly the same question. What am I really looking at?